I'm going to talk about the Silicon Valley today. Now you ask yourself, do we really need another video about the Silicon Valley? Maybe not, but it's YouTube, so what the heck. Now let's say I'm uniquely qualified to talk about living in Silicon Valley or the Bay Area because I spent my entire life here, right? I was a kid here, I went to elementary school here, middle school, high school, I went to Berkeley, right, an hour north, and then I went to Stanford for grad school, and then now I work in a tech company in the Bay Area. So like I spent my entire life here, and I feel like there's not that many people who have been here as long as I have. So yeah, I have a fairly unique perspective, right? Not really, I don't know. And for growing up in the Bay Area, I always kind of took everything for granted. I figured, it's just the Bay Area, like I was just here already, right? My parents moved here many years ago when land was still, cheap around here. Everything's like skyrocketed in price. But apparently Silicon Valley is like, a lot of tech companies apparently like we're famous. And so, I thought I'd make a video and like talk about, the pros and cons of, being here, right? And this is my perspective, my opinions, but we're just chatting, right? Now, if you're looking for like a place to settle down, like have a family, obviously like the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, a lot of these cities are like fairly safe, very family friendly, and so there's lots of like suburbs, and that's like a pro with cons. It's like a pro or a con depending on like who you are, right? If you're a family and you want somewhere safe, then yeah, it's a great place to be. But the problem is, for people like me, like growing up in high school, it didn't matter because we were studying all day and just indoors. But like as we got older and like we realized like there's really no nightlife around here, right? Like it's a suburbs, so like me and when my friends and we start hanging out, like some nights we would just be parked like in my parents' driveway and be like what is there to do around here? Like we don't know where to go because everything closes early, right? And there's like K-Town. I think some of those places are open late, and there's SF, but like generally speaking, a lot of the Bay Area it's like very quiet. It's very safe. But another like kind of con is like everything's just so insanely expensive, right? My parents moved here many years ago before everything got like super crazy expensive, and I actually grew up in this city called Cupertino. Now, if that city rings a bell to you, that's because we're famous for having Apple headquarters, right? Apple was here, and when I was a kid, I didn't really, Apple. Obviously, like when I was a kid, like I kind of saw Apple grow. Like Apple was already famous at the time, right? But now like Apple's like one of the most expensive companies in the world, and so it's very big. But it's very interesting to see like Apple kind of just grow in Cupertino, and obviously like everything became very expensive partially because of them. But like me and my friends, like our parents, like they have houses. Their houses are probably worth like so much money now, but like we can never buy it because like we just happen to be there at the right time, like early on. And that's another issue with the Bay Area is everything here is like so expensive around a lot of the cities. If you want to buy like $1 million gets you like a shack or whatever, right? If you want to buy like a normal like single family home, not even like a big home, like maybe 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 2 bath or whatever, like it's probably gonna be like $2-3 million, right? Like in the area at least. And it's just insane how expensive everything is. It's like I can't attribute. I don't know what to attribute to. You partially attribute to maybe like the tech companies, right? The salaries are a lot higher to accommodate the living costs. I guess at the same time, maybe the schools are also like very like good. You probably heard that a lot of the high schools in the area, like Cupertino School District, like for instance, like Lynbrook, Monte Vista, Homestead. Homestead is actually where Steve Jobs and like Wozniak, the founders of Apple, went to school, and that's considered like one of the easier schools in the district, if that means anything. And there's like near Stanford, there's a high school like Palo Alto High School and Gunn High School, and these are basically insanely competitive, like high schools that like are feeder schools for like Stanford. And let me tell you this, okay? Like my high school was just insane. I went to like one of those high schools, and those high schools are just insanely difficult. Like very good high schools, so that's why like a lot of parents want to send their kids there. But like good depending on how you word it, right? Because they're academically strong, I would say. Now, if you believe it, like the high school that I attended, right, in comparison to college at Berkeley and Stanford, like my high school was like way tougher. Okay, the students at my high school were way more competitive than like when I was taking classes at Berkeley or Stanford, and so that gives you a sense of like how difficult things are, and like a lot of the high schools in the area are that like academically strong. Crazy enough, there are like even crazier. There are other like crazy high schools in the East Coast that are also like very tough, like Thomas Jefferson High School or whatever, and like just they have like college level classes in their high school. But the thing is, these high schools are insanely stressful. Like in high school, I would wake up in the morning some days and feel like, ugh, like how am I gonna get through today? And I never ever felt that way in college or grad school or even in my job. And so to have to feel that way in high school is just like insane. But yeah, the highly sought after public schools are like another reason probably why the land value is just so high, right? And a lot of families want to move here. But of course, like, obviously the Silicon Valley is known for all of the big tech companies that are in the area that happen to have their headquarters here. Like, it's not just like a branch here, it's like the headquarters. Apple's in Cupertino, you got Google and Mountain View, you have Facebook and Redwood City, and they're all like within like 30 minutes of each other. It's crazy, right? And Microsoft has branches here, Amazon has branches here. And of course, there's a lot of tech startups here, right? And so obviously, if you're trying to start a company and you need to find like all the tech talent, you come to the Silicon Valley. A lot of people like to come here because that's where all the talent is, right? And also, if you're a person who wants to get into tech or is planning on a career in tech, you'd come to the Silicon Valley because that's where all of like the openings, the job openings and opportunities are. And so that makes for this kind of like environment where actually, if you live in the area, a lot of people here just work in tech. And like, it's just going on the street, if you just ask strangers, like, oh, where do you work or whatever, like 95% of them will be like, oh yeah, I work in this and this tech company. It's a little less interesting because it's not very diverse. Like, if you're just craving to like hear something interesting about like where someone works, like, oh, you work in fashion or you work in art or you work in like finance or whatever, that's a little more like, then it's like, oh, it's a kind of different. Like, a lot of people just here work in tech, and it is what it is. And obviously, like, the salaries, like the compensation here is obviously like very, very high, but that's also to accommodate the living costs. Now, because homes have gotten really, really expensive in a lot of like the South Bay, like Cupertino, Sunnyvale, Mountain View, Palo Alto, like these sort of cities are like very, very expensive housings, right? And like East Bay might be a little bit better, like the Milpitas, Fremont, that like East Bay area, San Ramon, those like some of those like cities on the East Bay, those are like better in terms of housing. But then because I wanted to like live closer to where I work, then like things are a little more expensive, and so that's just something we have to live with. Now it's very interesting because even though like a lot of the homes are really, really expensive, like for some reason like you hear about people like from overseas, like maybe from Asia, like coming over here and just buying a lot of these homes just in straight cash, just to have somewhere to put their money in, not necessarily to live in these homes. And that's also like kind of annoying. 6 months ago or whatever, like I saw this home, me and my friends, we saw this home in Palo Alto. And like, it's a pretty decent sized home, like pretty big home, right? But like, it's not like crazy, right? We looked online and it's like $12.5 million home or whatever. That was like the asking price. And I think, and then we're like, who's gonna buy this house? And after like, 3 weeks, like we found out that the house was sold, and we looked it up and it was like 12 million. Someone bought it for $12 million. And guess what? We visited the place 3 or 4 months later, and the house, like it's like a big window in front, right? So you can see like kind of inside when you're walking by, and it's like completely unfurnished, like it's completely unoccupied. Someone literally just bought this home and just like left it there. And this happens in the Silicon Valley. I'm like, oh my god, like how is this possible? Okay, so here's one thing that I think a lot of people appreciate about the Bay Area that I didn't really appreciate because I'm not an outdoorsy person. But if you are an outdoorsy person, you like camping and hiking and whatever, the Bay Area is apparently really, really good for that. Okay, so like we got we got Half Moon Bay, we got the Santa Cruz Mountains in the south, we got the Fremont, we got Marin County north of SF. So we have like all these places with lots and lots of like good hiking trails, all within like an hour and a half like driving distance. So it's actually like pretty impressive that we have all of these options to go hiking. It's just I wasn't never really much of a hiker, and so I didn't really take advantage. But now that I'm talking about it, I probably should take more advantage of these opportunities. Okay, well, I don't know, like, the reason I want to make this video is because I figured, I don't really know where, like, the people who, like, watch my videos or whatever, I don't really know exactly know the geography of, like, where people watching these videos come from, and so, but apparently, like, Silicon Valley is, like, a thing, and people are curious about the Silicon Valley. Like, I never really I never really thought of it that way because I was just here already, and I kind of took everything for granted, and so, I thought I'd talk a little bit about it, but, if there's things that I should be talking about that people are interested in, feel free to leave a comment or whatever. But yeah, this is just us talking, right? I hope this video was somewhat educational, or I did say a lot of things that stereotypically people already know about, but I'm confirming it because I actually live here, like I'm a real person and I've been here like most of my life, and so hopefully you learned something. All right, well, hope you're doing well, and have a nice week, day, whatever.